I can't stand Jessica being here every single day. Honestly, she's useless with Leo. I have to fix everything after she leaves. Jennifer's words sliced through the hallway and hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze, clutching my crochet bag where I carried homemade cookies for my grandson. My knees buckled. Useless? Me? After 3 years waking at 5 a.m. taking 2 packed buses, enduring backaches from carrying my grandkid in my arms? I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears already blurring my vision. I couldn't let anyone see me like this, especially not Leo, who could come running any minute with that smile that lit up my days. "Grandma Carol's here," he always used to shout. Mike appeared in the hallway before I could compose myself. "Mom, are you okay?" His eyes, so much like his father's, searched mine with concern. "Yes, honey. Just a silly dizzy spell. Must be my blood pressure." I lied, forcing a smile. At 67, I'd learned to swallow pains far bigger than this. "You must be wondering how a devoted grandmother like me ended up here. How the words useless and messes everything up could be aimed at someone who gave up her own life to care for a grandchild. Let me tell you how it all started. 6 months ago, I was in my usual routine. I'd wake before the sun rose, prepare a hearty breakfast, and leave the house while it was still dark. My neighborhood isn't the safest, but after 40 years living there, I know every corner, every early bird neighbor. Mrs. Henderson at the bakery always saved a warm roll for me. "Going to see your grandkid again today, Carol?" she'd ask, even though she knew the answer. "Like every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday," I'd reply proudly, tucking the change into my worn wallet. The first bus was always packed. I rarely got a seat, even with my hair completely white and the cane I use on rainy days, when my right knee acts up. On the second bus, the situation usually improved. It was a less busy line, and most of the time, some young person would get up to offer me their seat. Getting to Mike's house was always a relief. Their apartment was in a nice complex, the kind with a playground and a BBQ area. So different from the simple house where I raised my 3 children alone, after Richard left us. That specific Tuesday, I arrived, as always, at 7 a.m. sharp. Jessica was already dressed for work, in those elegant office clothes and her hair impeccably styled. So different from me, in my floral dress from the flea market and my hair pulled back in a simple bun. "Good morning, Jessica. Has Leo woken up yet?" "Not yet. He had a fever last night. We gave him medicine. If it keeps up, maybe it's better if he doesn't go to preschool tomorrow." Preschool. That word had started to pop up in conversations a few weeks ago. Leo was almost 4, and Jessica insisted he needed socialization with other children. As if the afternoons we spent at the neighborhood park weren't enough. "I can stay with him tomorrow too, if you need," I offered promptly. Jessica exchanged a quick, loaded glance with Mike. "We'll see how he is," she replied dryly, picking up the expensive bag my son had given her for her birthday. When we were alone, Mike hugged me tight. My middle son had always been the most affectionate of the 3. "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'll make some coffee before I leave." In the kitchen, while he warmed the milk, I noticed a colorful brochure stuck to the fridge with a fruit-shaped magnet I'd brought back from a trip. "Little Steps Preschool, full-day program. Now enrolling," the paper read. "Are you really thinking of putting Leo in preschool?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Mike hesitated before answering. "We're looking into it. Jessica thinks it's time. But he's still so little. And I'm here, honey. It's no trouble for me at all. You already do so much for us, Mom. And Jessica thinks it's important for his development. You know, all the kids his age in the building are already in school. I nodded, swallowing the metallic taste of exclusion rising in my throat. Who was I to question their decisions? After all, Leo was their son, not mine. Even if for the past 3 years I'd spent more waking hours with him than either of them. The little one woke up soon after, his eyes still heavy with sleep. Seeing me, he broke into that smile that melted my heart. "Grandma Carol!" he shouted, jumping out of bed and running into my arms, still in his pajamas. The rest of that day followed so many others. I prepared the oatmeal he loved, even though Jessica always insisted on those sugary, boxed cereals. We read The Little Prince together, a book I'd bought on sale at the neighborhood bookstore. We played with homemade Play-Doh that I made myself with flour, salt, and food coloring. Much softer than the store-bought kind, and without all those chemicals. In the afternoon when he napped, I used the time to get dinner ready. I made a vegetable soup, grating each carrot and potato with the care of someone preparing a feast. That's how I showed my love. Through food, through care, through constant presence. When Jessica arrived around 6 p.m., Leo was taking a bath with the rubber duck he got for Christmas. "How was his day?" she asked, dropping her bag on the sofa. "Very good. The fever didn't come back. He ate everything, and we even made a drawing for you." I proudly showed her the paper where Leo had scribbled 3 stick figures. Mommy, Grandma, and me, according to his explanation. Jessica glanced at it quickly and smiled, but her eyes remained cold. I took the drawing back and folded it carefully, putting it in my bag. I'd hang it on my fridge, where I already had a gallery of my little artist's masterpieces. "I made soup for dinner," I commented. "It's on the stove, just needs to be heated." "Oh, thanks. But we ordered Japanese takeout yesterday and there's plenty left. We'll finish that." I nodded, feeling a familiar dull ache in my chest. Once again, my efforts seemed unnecessary, but I swallowed the disappointment, as I always did. "Then I'll head out. It's getting late and the last bus runs at 7:30 p.m. Mike can't take you today. He has an online meeting with overseas clients." I grabbed my bag and gave Leo a long kiss on the forehead. He was already in clean pajamas, smelling of lavender soap. "Grandma will be back soon, my love." "Promise to tell the frog story next time?" he asked, his eyes shining. "I promise. And I'll bring chocolate chip cookies, too." On the bus ride home, I watched the city through the misty windows. Lights were beginning to flicker on, families gathering for dinner in illuminated apartments. I thought of my empty house, of the silence that awaited me. Since my youngest son moved upstate 5 years ago, loneliness had become my most constant companion. But I didn't allow myself to complain. After all, what's a mother's life about if not self-sacrifice? First raising your children, then helping with the grandchildren. It was the natural cycle of things. And I was lucky to still be useful, to still be needed. At least, that's what I thought. The following weeks brought small changes that at the time didn't seem important. Jessica started leaving notes with instructions on how to care for Leo. No sweets before lunch. Limit TV time to 30 minutes. Only use the educational toys from the blue shelf. As if I, who had raised 3 healthy, well-mannered children, needed guidance on how to care for a child. One rainy Thursday, I arrived drenched at their house. The second bus had been delayed, and I had to run 3 blocks in the pouring rain to avoid being late. Even so, it was 7:15 a.m. when I rang the doorbell. Jessica yanked the door open, cell phone to her ear, a visible frown of impatience on her face. "You're late," she hissed, cupping her hand over the receiver. "I have an 8 a.m. meeting and still need to get some things organized." "I'm sorry, honey. The bus." She had already turned back to her phone conversation, leaving me standing in the hallway, dripping water onto the rug I'd helped them pick out for their wedding anniversary. Leo came running and hugged me, not caring about my wet clothes. "Grandma looks like a little fish," he laughed, touching my face with his warm little hands. That hug made up for any slights, any delayed bus, any harsh word. That afternoon, while Leo slept, I found a stack of preschool brochures on the kitchen table. Several were circled in red pen, with notes in the margins. Full day. Early English immersion. Montessori method. A cold knot twisted in my stomach. This wasn't just a vague idea. They were really planning this, and from the looks of it, it was closer than I imagined. When Mike came home that night, earlier than usual, I sensed something was different. He seemed nervous, avoiding my gaze while he played with Leo in the living room. "Mom, can you come to the kitchen for a minute?" he called after Jessica arrived. We sat at the table, the 3 of us. Me, Mike, and Jessica, like a tribunal, and I was the defendant, with no idea what the charge was. "Mom, we're thinking of making some changes to Leo's routine," Mike began, carefully treading water. "We think it's time for him to go to school," Jessica added, cutting straight to it. "He needs to be around other kids, have a more structured routine." "I understand," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "So, when are you thinking of starting?" "Next month," Mike said. "We've already visited a few schools and we really like Bright Start Preschool. It's only 10 minutes from here." "Is it full-time?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Jessica replied. "He'll eat lunch there. The school even has a nutritionist on staff." I nodded slowly, letting the information sink in. "So, you won't need me to come take care of him anymore." Mike reached across the table and took my hand. "Mom, it's not that we don't need you. We just think it's time to lighten your load. You've done so much for us already." "And on weekends?" I asked, grasping at the last thread of hope. "Of course you can visit him whenever you want," Jessica said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We're family, after all. Family." The word echoed in my head, hollow and distant. Family was what I believed we had built over the last 3 years. Me, practically living at their house during the day, taking care of Leo as if he were my own son. Making meals, telling stories, teaching him values. Being useful. Necessary. "Of course," I finally replied. "You're his parents. You know what's best for Leo." That night, on the almost empty bus ride home, I let the tears fall freely. It wasn't just about losing my mornings with my grandson. It was about losing my purpose, my reason for waking up early, for facing the day. It was about gradually becoming dispensable. And it was exactly a week after that conversation that I arrived early and heard those words that still echo in my head. "She's completely useless. She does everything wrong with Leo." Useless. The word no mother, no grandmother, no person who's dedicated their life to others ever wants to hear. But the worst was yet to come. The truth behind those words would be even more devastating than I could imagine. That night, After hearing Jessica's words, I floated home like a ghost. The bus swayed. City lights flickered past the window, but I was somewhere else. Useless. The word hammered in my head like a sentence. 3 years waking up before dawn. 3 years of aching knees. 3 years of unconditional love, reduced to this. Uselessness. When I got home, I didn't even turn on the lights. I sat in the old armchair in the living room. The same one where I nursed my children, where I told stories, where I cried after Richard passed, and just stared into the darkness. The photographs on the wall, barely visible in the dim light, seemed to be watching me. Mike as a child, smiling with missing front teeth. Teenage Mike at his high school graduation, proud with the diploma I'd sacrificed so much to pay for. Adult Mike, on his wedding day, to Jessica. Jessica. In the beginning, I tried so hard to get close to her. I'd bring baked goods when they visited, ask about her work, compliment her always stylish clothes. But there was something about her, an invisible barrier I could never cross. As if she feared I would take up too much space in my own son's life. She just needs time. My oldest daughter, Debbie, who lives out in Cleveland and visits me twice a year, would say, "Some daughters-in-law are just like that, Mom." But time passed, and the barrier only grew. When Leo was born and Jessica had postpartum depression, I thought we could finally connect. That my experience, my shoulder, my willingness to help would be welcome. And for a while, it seemed so. Mike would call me, desperate, at 2 a.m, with Leo crying in the background and Jessica locked in the bathroom, sobbing. "Mom, I don't know what to do," he'd say, his voice choked. "Jessica's not doing well. The baby won't stop crying, and I have an important meeting tomorrow." And there I'd go, catching the first bus of the pre-dawn hours, crossing the city to be the safe harbor my son needed, that my grandson needed, that I thought Jessica needed too. 3 days after hearing those devastating words, I still hadn't worked up the courage to confront the situation. I kept going to their house, taking care of Leo, making lunch, pretending nothing had happened. But something inside me was different. Every loving gesture towards my grandson now came with a nagging doubt. Am I doing this wrong? Is this all so useless? On a particularly cold Wednesday, Leo was fussier than usual. He refused the oatmeal he always loved. "I don't want it, Grandma. I want chocolate cereal like at school." School. He was already attending that preschool 3 mornings a week, as adaptation before starting full-time next month. And he was already coming back with new habits, new words, small rejections of our old routines. "But you always liked Grandma's oatmeal, my love. Look, I put honey and cinnamon, just the way you like it." "At school, teacher said honey isn't good for kids," he replied, crossing his little arms. I took a deep breath. "Honey isn't good for very small babies, Leo. You're almost a 4-year-old big boy." "Don't want it," he insisted, pushing the bowl, which nearly slid off the table. At that moment, I remembered when Mike was that age, just as stubborn as his son. Once, he refused to eat the vegetable soup I'd made after an exhausting day at work. Richard was still alive, but already sick, bedridden in the next room. "I don't want this ugly soup," Mike screamed, stamping his feet under the table. I was so tired, so worried about the bills, about Richard's illness, about the uncertain future that I did something I regret to this day. I slapped the table hard and yelled, "Then starve!" I left the kitchen crying, feeling like the worst mother in the world. 10 minutes later, I came back regretful. ready to apologize and make anything he wanted to eat. But I found Mike sitting at the table, eating the soup in silence, tears streaming down his round face. "It's good, Mom," he said when he saw me, trying to smile through his tears. That image never left me. My small son, swallowing not only the soup but also his own pride, his own disappointment with a mother who had lost control. That day, I promised myself I would never again let exhaustion speak louder than love. Looking now at Leo, with his stubbornness so similar to his father's, a wave of love and patience washed over me. "It's okay, my love. Grandma will make something else for you. How about pancakes? We can draw a little face with honey. I mean, with chocolate." His little face lit up. "Can it be a dinosaur?" "I'll try to make the best pancake dinosaur you've ever seen." As I prepared the batter, with Leo sitting on the stool beside me, watching every movement, I thought about how motherhood and grandmotherhood is made of these small moments of surrender, of adaptation, of learning that loving sometimes means yielding. But what about when it's our turn to be loved? When we need someone to yield a little, for someone to see our worth, our effort? It was at that moment, with the skillet on the stove and Leo chattering about dinosaurs, that I decided I needed to talk to Mike. I needed to tell him what I'd heard, what I was feeling. Not for revenge against Jessica, but for respect for myself. "Mom, are you okay? You seem distant today." Mike had arrived home early from work and found me on the porch, watching Leo play in the small garden of the condo complex. Jessica hadn't returned from the office yet. "We need to talk, son," I said, my heart pounding. "There's something that's been bothering me for days." He sat beside me looking worried. He'd always been a good son, sensitive to my feelings. When Richard passed, it was Mike, at just 12 years old, who sat with me every night for weeks, holding my hand while I cried silently, so as not to wake the other children. "What is it, Mom? Are you sick? Is it your blood pressure again?" "No, son. It's about something I heard. Something that cut me deeply." I told him about that morning, about Jessica's words on the phone. As I spoke, I watched his face shift from surprise to shame, and finally to a kind of sad resignation. "Mom." He hesitated, looking at the floor. "Jessica really thinks you smother Leo. And, well, we are thinking of putting him in full-time preschool." "And why didn't you tell me before?" I asked, feeling the bitter sting of exclusion. "We didn't want to hurt you. We know how much you love being with him." It was then that the truth hit me like a slap. It wasn't about my care, being inadequate. It was about me no longer being necessary. The uselessness wasn't in my methods, but in my very presence. "Son, I understand you want Leo to go to school. It's natural. It's important for him. What hurts me is hearing that I'm useless, that I do everything wrong. After all this time I've dedicated to you." Mike ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd known since he was a teenager. "Mom, Jessica didn't mean it like that. She was stressed that day, had problems at work." "Don't defend the indefensible, Mike," I interrupted with a firmness that surprised us both. "I'm not a child. I know when someone truly thinks ill of me." We sat in silence for a few moments, watching Leo, who was now chasing a butterfly around the garden, oblivious to the tense adult conversation. "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked, seeming smaller, younger, like the boy who used to come to my room, scared by nightmares. "I don't want you to do anything, son. I just wanted you to know how I feel, and I want you to understand my decision." What decision? I'm going to reorganize my life. I can't keep coming over 3 times a week to watch Leo anymore. You're right about him starting school. I really need to find other things to fill my days. I watched the relief and guilt flicker across Mike's face. Relief that he wouldn't have to have that difficult conversation with his wife, and guilt for feeling that relief. Are you sure, Mom? We don't want you to feel left out. I'm sure, I said, with more conviction than I truly felt. I've raised my kids, Mike. Now I need to learn to live my own life. Just then, Leo came tearing over to us, his little hands cupped together. Grandma, look what I caught! A ladybug! He knelt to show me the tiny red insect crawling on his palm. His eyes sparkled with the discovery, filled with the confidence that I'd share his joy, just like I always did. Oh, honey, she's beautiful. Did you know ladybugs bring good luck? Really, Grandma? They do. But we have to let her go back to nature, so she can share her luck with other people, too. He nodded solemnly and sprinted back to the yard to release the bug. I watched him go, a lump forming in my throat. How many small moments like that would I miss now? The next Sunday, when everyone was gathered for our traditional pot roast dinner, I announced my decision. I'm going to take a crafts class on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and on Wednesdays, I'm going to start going to the ladies' group at church. Jessica looked visibly relieved. Mike, confused. But what about Leo? He asked. You know, you're right about preschool. It'll be good for him to socialize with other kids. I smiled, masking the ache. Debbie, my oldest daughter, who was visiting for the weekend, looked at me with a mix of surprise and admiration. She always told me I sacrificed too much for the family, that I needed to live my own life. Now I was finally taking her advice, even if it was for reasons she couldn't possibly know. That's fantastic, Mom, Debbie exclaimed. It's about time you put yourself first for a change. Jessica enthusiastically agreed, piling more salad onto her plate. The crafts class sounds wonderful. You always had a knack for artistic things. Only Leo seemed genuinely sad about the news. But Grandma, who's gonna tell me stories? Who's gonna make me dinosaur pancakes? I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled at my grandson. Grandma will still come visit you, sweetie, on the weekends, and I'll tell you all the stories you want. Promise? I promise. Later, as I was washing the dinner dishes, some habits are hard to break, even in someone else's house, Debbie came to help me, telling Jessica to take a break. What really happened, Mom? She asked in a low voice, drying plates. I overheard Jessica saying I was useless, that I did everything wrong with Leo. I confessed, keeping my voice down. And when I confronted your brother, I realized I just wasn't needed here anymore. Debbie let the plate she was drying clatter into the sink, making us both jump. That ungrateful woman, she hissed, her eyes sparking with anger. After everything you've done for them, I'm going to have a serious talk with her right now. I gripped her arm firmly. No, Debbie, you're not doing anything of the sort. But, Mom, I don't want to cause more problems for Mike. He's already torn between loyalty to his wife and to me. And in the end, they're a family. I'm just his mother. You are so much more than that. You're Leo's grandma. You're the one who held things together when Jessica couldn't even look at her own son. I sighed, feeling the weight of all the years, all the sacrifices. It's precisely because I love my son and my grandson so much that I won't create an impossible atmosphere between us. I'm going to step back a little, with dignity. And who knows? Maybe they'll miss me. Debbie hugged me tight, just like she used to when she was little and wanted to comfort me through the hardships we faced. You're too strong, you know? Sometimes. Too strong for your own good. That night, I went home feeling a mix of sadness and, surprisingly, a slight relief. As if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The weight of constantly trying to prove my worth. Of trying to be useful, necessary, indispensable. The following weeks were all about adjusting. I really did sign up for that crafts class, more to fill the time than out of genuine interest. In the first few classes, I sat by myself, watching the other women who seemed to have known each other for years, with their laughter and lively conversations about grandkids and recipes. First time in this class? A woman with vibrantly red-dyed hair asked, sitting next to me. Yes, I replied, a little shyly. I've never been very good with crafts, to be honest. No one's born knowing everything. She smiled, extending her hand. I'm Brenda. Widowed 12 years, 3 kids, 7 grandkids, and a great-granddaughter on the way. Carol, I answered, shaking her hand. Widowed 20 years, 3 kids, 1 grandson, and a whole lot of inexperience in crafts. We laughed together, and something about that shared laugh warmed my heart. When was the last time I'd laughed like that? So carefree, with someone who wasn't family? At the church group, the experience was similar. I initially felt out of place, but I was soon welcomed by women who, like me, carried their own stories of loss, joy, sacrifice, and new beginnings. Shirley, an 80-year-old woman with the energy of a teenager, organized the group's charitable activities. We need someone to coordinate this year's winter coat drive, she announced at one of the meetings. Someone well organized and with some time available. Before I knew it, my hand was raised. I can help, I heard my own voice say. Surprised glances turned to me, the quiet newcomer who barely participated in conversations. Wonderful! Shirley exclaimed, clapping her hands. We have our coordinator. I left that meeting with a list of tasks and a strange feeling in my chest. Usefulness. Not the servile usefulness of someone who exists only to meet the needs of others, but the dignified usefulness of someone who contributes because they can, because they want to, because they choose to. At home, I started reorganizing spaces. The guest bedroom I always kept ready for when my kids visited was partly transformed into a small studio, where I practiced what I learned in the crafts class. I wasn't very good, but there was something therapeutic about working with my hands, about creating something out of nothing. On the walls, I still kept the family photographs. Mike, Debbie, my youngest, Robert, who now lived out of state. And, of course, many pictures of Leo. His first smile, his first steps, which I was lucky enough to witness. His first baby food, which I'd prepared myself. Looking at those images, I realized that no one could erase what I'd lived, what I'd built, the love I'd given. Even if now I was considered useless by some, what mattered was how I saw myself. And little by little, I was learning to see myself not just as a mother or a grandmother, but as Carol, a 67-year-old woman with so much left to live, to learn, to give. A month after my retirement, as Leo's primary caregiver, I received an unexpected call from Jessica. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was sorting donated clothes for the coat drive. Carol? Her voice sounded strangely hesitant. How are you doing? I'm fine, Jessica. How are you all? We're good. Leo's loving school. A pause. Actually, I'm calling because we need a favor. I took a deep breath, already anticipating what was coming. The school's closing on Friday for a teacher-parent conference. Normally, we'd ask my mom to watch him, but she's traveling with my dad. Would you be able to? Watch Leo? I finished. Yes. It would just be this one time. We just don't have anyone else, and I know you have a special fondness for him. A special fondness? As if my fierce love for my grandson was just some special fondness. As if 3 years dedicated to him could be summed up like that. I thought of all the mornings I woke up at 5 a.m., the crowded buses, the carefully prepared meals, the stories told, the bandaged, scraped knees, the lullabies. I thought of how easily I'd been replaced by a school, of how I'd been called useless. And then I thought of Leo, his smile when he saw me, the trust with which he placed his little hand in mine, the secrets we shared. He wasn't to blame for the words or actions of the adults around him. I'm sorry. I have a commitment, I replied calmly. Perhaps your mother can help. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. But what commitment? She asked, clearly blindsided by my refusal. I have an important meeting for the coat drive. I'm the coordinator this year. Can't you reschedule? It's just this once, Carol. Leo misses you. Misses me. The words hit my heart like arrows. I missed him too, every single day. I can't reschedule, Jessica. There are a lot of people depending on me. I paused. But I can watch him on Saturday, if you'd like. We could spend the day together. Another silence. She probably expected me to drop everything at the first call, like I always had. I'll check with Mike and let you know, she finally replied, her voice colder. Thanks anyway. When I hung up the phone, my hands were trembling. It was the first time I'd said no to a request involving Leo. The first time I'd put my own needs, my own commitments, ahead of their convenience. The truly devastating part wasn't being called useless. It was understanding that for some people, our value only exists in what we can do for them. But at 67, I finally understood. My worth doesn't depend on anyone's approval, not even from the family I loved so much. The following Saturday, Leo came to spend the day with me. Mike dropped him off early, looking a little sheepish. Mom, about Friday. Jessica didn't want. It's okay, honey. I cut in softly. We don't need to talk about it. Leo ran into my arms as soon as he came in, showering my face with kisses. Grandma! I missed you so much. School's fun, but they don't have dinosaur pancakes. I laughed, hugging him tight, smelling his little kid shampoo, feeling the warmth of his tiny body against mine. Today we're making all the dinosaur pancakes you can imagine, sweetie. We spent the whole day together, just like old times. We made pancakes, I told him stories. We played in the small backyard. Leo told me about school, about his new friends, about his teacher, who's nice but not as nice as you, Grandma. When Mike came to pick him up late that afternoon, Leo didn't want to leave. I want to stay with Grandma. Please, Daddy. Mike looked at me, a silent plea for help. Leo, I said, crouching down to his eye level. Grandma wishes you could stay forever too, but your home is with Daddy and Mommy. And you know something? What? Even when we're not together, my love for you is always right here. I pointed to his chest. And your love for me is always right here. I pointed to my own heart. He nodded solemnly, as if he truly understood the depth of those simple words. Can I come next Saturday too? I looked at Mike, who nodded with a small smile. Of course you can, sweetie. Grandma will be waiting. After they left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun slowly set. The day had been perfect, full of laughter, hugs, precious little moments I'll treasure forever. I realized I didn't have to be present every single day in my grandson's life to be important to him. I didn't have to be his babysitter to be his grandma. Our bond was stronger, deeper than convenience or necessity. That night, before sleeping, I looked at Richard's photograph on the bedside table. You'd be proud of me, Rich, I whispered, touching his face frozen in time. I'm finally learning to live for myself. And for the first time in a long time, I slept deeply, without dreams, without worries, just with the quiet certainty that at 67 I was just beginning a new chapter of my story. A story that, I now knew, was worth living for its own sake, not just as an appendage in the lives of those I loved. The truly devastating part wasn't being called useless. It was understanding that for some people, our value only exists in what we can do for them. But at 67, I finally understood. My worth doesn't depend on anyone's approval. Not even from the family I loved so much.